Hello, my friends. I'm Rich Larson, and I'm the IRC Tire Guy. Today, we are live again, and as you can see, it is snowing. Now, a lot of you guys have hit me up and asked, would you do an episode on mud or slick situations? And honestly, here in Utah, we don't get a lot of slick situations. We either have full-bore winter where it's not even possible to ride, or we have 100-degree desert dusty, right? So I've kind of been waiting for the right time to make this happen, and today it was raining. It's actually turned to snow just barely, and I'm just starting the video, so hopefully we can get through this before it gets too crazy, but we should be good. It's very wet. It's been raining for multiple days. It's quite muddy out. I did a little bit of riding on the way up here, but I just want to get right into it and show you guys my slick terrain approach. So, starting right off the bat here, we've got this little bit of a side hill climb. Not crazy steep, but steep enough. You might not be able to tell on video, but it is quite muddy as well. So, as soon as we get into slick terrain, confidence is key. The more momentum we can hold, the better off we're going to be. Now, the hard part about momentum in slick terrain is establishing momentum, right? So we're going to talk in depth on that in a few different ways. But starting here, in this situation, I'm going to first check my running, right? So down here on the bottom, I'm going to make sure that there's no rocks, there's nothing loose in the way that's going to unsettle my approach. I'm looking for every advantage possible, right? So if there's a little bit of a rock, I'll get my rear tire on that rock and I'll zap it out, make sure that I have a nice clean run in. From there, I'm focused on balance. Now, I always preach balance, balance, balance. And in slick situations, it's even more important than you would imagine, right? The more weight you can put on those pegs, the more weight you can get on your tires, and the more momentum you can hold. But there is a nuance to slick situations and balance. And I'm going to get a little more in depth as we move through, but I want to touch on this. When you've established your momentum, often we'll try to maintain feet on the pegs. Now, if we're trying to hold those feet on the pegs and do a section, without dabbing, sometimes that might hinder your momentum, right? So sometimes when you're trying as hard as you can to maintain balance, you end up hindering your momentum because as you want to kind of maintain balance, you might let off the throttle, lose that momentum, right? So instead of trying to kind of maintain feet on the pegs, of course, we want to maintain the feet on the pegs as much as we can. The main focus in slick situations is finding momentum. So I'm going to try to start as centered and balanced and true as possible. Heavy weight on my right peg, right? Because this is the uphill side. I'd rather be dabbing on somewhere that's easier to dab. So I'm going to heavy weight on that right side peg. I'm going to drop my right side heel. I'm going to set up as centered and balanced as possible. From there, I'm going to get on the power in this situation pretty medium. I'm not holding it wide open and trying to, spin the tire up the face, and we're going to talk more on that in a later section, but I am just going to hold a nice steady throttle. I'll initiate the slip before I even start to move, hips back, standing up on the pegs and moving. Now, one thing about as we go through these technical spots, as we stand up on the pegs in dry situations, we throw a lot of drive into the machine. A lot of body weight, right? Getting in front of the momentum of the machine. Now, if you throw your weight too much in slick situations, it's taking weight off the rear tire and it's going to spin. So we're kind of trying to take a beat or hold those hips back a little more to maintain pressure on that rear tire and maximize our momentum. So from here, it's steady throttle, smooth. When we get in to this side hill, again, I want to be dabbing on the uphill side. But as we get into this side hill, a key piece, and this is going to be huge throughout the day as we go through these sections, I want you guys to try to get off your clutch. Okay, so once I've established momentum here, I'm trying to almost get out, let that clutch all the way out, outside of the friction zone. Once you're outside of the friction zone, you actually will find it easier to hold traction and therefore gaining momentum because we have an obstacle up at the top here and we want as much momentum as possible as we hit that obstacle. So gaining momentum, a great way to do it in slick situations is try and focus on getting off the clutch. But in this situation, as we get up this hill here, I'm thinking, get off the clutch, get off the clutch. I want to be out and almost using all throttle, okay? So clutch is for initiating momentum. Once we've established that momentum, we want to get out on that clutch and let that tire and that bike kind of chug and pull us forward, okay? let me explain that a little more in depth as far as that friction zone. So every time you transfer from in and out on that clutch, you are running the risk of breaking traction. That transition from engaged to disengaged is the place where we break traction. So after you establish your momentum, we want to get off on that clutch. I'm going to be very smooth with the release here, but then I'm going to be out and try to stay off of it until we get up further. So let's continue up here. Again, off the clutch here, we're trying to maintain that tractable control. Now, I've got another angle of this, so I'll kind of cut it in as I'm talking here, but as you can see here, we have some chop. We have a lot of loose rock. It's side hill, it's slick. There's basically a canyon right here that's make it really challenging to get through where we're gonna have to push. I'm trying to avoid all of that. So again, I'm gonna try to get as much momentum possible through here, and then I'm gonna get on it heavy right before the ledge, not on the ledge, but right before. Heavy, hard power. I'm holding my hips back. I'm almost holding pressure, right? Holding that front end high, maximizing our weight on the rear tire. Getting on it heavy right before the obstacle. That way, I track above. I say it all the time, aim with your rear tire, okay? A lot of riders will get to here and they'll aim their front right there and they think they made it. Then they have to fight and push and struggle through this gnarly chop. I'm going to avoid all of that and shoot my bike as deep as I can. I would much rather be up here, right? Getting that bike deep, pivoting over, and even dropping, right? It's much easier to drop the machine down the hill than it is to move up the hill. And that goes times 10 in slick situations because obviously the slicker it is, the harder it is to go up, harder it is to establish momentum. So once we get up this high, I'm going to reset. We've got a little bit of a ledge here. This one's like really hard to do clean. I'll probably end up kind of framing and tracking over. I'll try it a few times. But that being said, again, you guys heard me say, momentum, establishing momentum after it's established, getting off of that clutch is going to be really important. So essentially, I'll establish, clutch out. From here to here, I'm going to be off the clutch. I'll bring the clutch back into the friction zone, load the engine, release off the clutch, reduce the throttle, collect that power. And we're going to talk heavy on power collection a little later on the next section. But off the throttle, trying to get that bike to track and using that flywheel to pull me up that last ledge. So I'm going to go ahead and just do it. Hopefully my camera kind of tracks me up this. I do a lot of these videos by myself. Sometimes my family helps me film. I got certain people that help me, but the majority of the stuff is done by a robot cameraman who isn't the best cameraman. He does okay though. And edited and all that by myself. So anyway, I don't know why I'm telling you guys that. Here we go. So, oh my gosh, my seat is absolutely covered with snow. TBI is a little bit cold-blooded as well. Look at you, can't even see my Husky emblem. It's gonna be slick. All right, so as I said, first thing, we make sure we have a clean run-in. I like to make sure I don't have any rocks, anything that's gonna unsettle my approach. Now from here, I'm hips back, hard press on the peg, steady release of the clutch. I'm gonna try to get off, load, and run it deep. Here we go. Hips back, off the clutch, on it, oh, and I didn't get it. See that? So that was a good example of what not to do. Now, I'm in a really tight spot here. I didn't get enough momentum. I kind of drove it hard into this and didn't quite get the drive that I needed. I lost a little bit of traction there. I should have held more pressure, even, held harder momentum, got on it a little bit harder and really tried to drive it in deep. My bike was a little bit on the cold side, but I don't like making excuses, do I? This will be a good example of fighting. So again, I'm going to try to stay out of that chop. And I'm just going to try to run it from here. Nice. Like I said, that chop is no good. We don't want to be fighting that stuff. So now I work it over. Work it over. See, that's scary. There's a cliff right there. Easier to drop the bike into. From here we set up, give ourselves the highest advantage. Up and over. Not bad. All right, let's try again. I don't get everything first try. Pressure was on. We're going to try to get a heavy run, establish that momentum. I want to be going a little faster at the top. Might even load a little more here, but I was thinking kind of too much about what I spoke about. Sometimes it's about getting into that flow, right? Instead of thinking about what I'm doing. Here we go. There you go. Right to that clutch slip. So you guys could see there, as I got up that, I went directly to a clutch slip. So I got up through this chop, really drove it in hard, and tried to make sure I get up on top of the machine, up above the bike, right at the end there. I want to make sure that I'm running that bike deep and I'm putting myself in the best possible situation to then be able to set up for the next ledge. You guys saw there, confidence, right? Momentum is key in slick situations. The problem is in slick situations, you ride more tentative. You're a little bit more tight. It's a little scarier, right? In those slick situations, it's like, you got to get past that and really get that drive. You saw on the first run, I just completely came in tentative, thinking about other stuff, not approaching it proper, and it didn't work. Same thing here. Whoops, that's slick. Set myself up. There we go. That was better through that. Try again. Same thing. You guys can see there, lug. And then as soon as I get to this cliff, I load right before it, then reduce the throttle. I'm slipping the clutch in that friction zone, but my throttle is essentially off, using the reduction of power in the flywheel to pull me up, tractable deep above all this chop where I'd have to be pushing. Same thing here. I set up, hips back. Nice little reduction of power as I get over that cliff. Gnarly stuff. That is a lot of fun. You guys can see it's slick, it's gnarly. It's all about the timing in your delivery of power. I'm looking for any flat spot to be able to find that momentum, then reduce and hold traction through. You also saw there the hips back, steady dabs, hard press on the opposite peg, dabs for only a correction in balance. Load of engine, reduction of throttle, running that bike deep. There's a lot that goes on when you're approaching this type of terrain. And confidence is so key in slick situations, just because the faster you go, the more momentum you have, the easier it's going to be. And I know that's simplifying it a lot. But momentum, establishing the momentum is the hardest part of slick terrain. I like that. Let's go and get another section. One last thing before we move on to the next section is I want to talk a little bit about tire setup. That's a JX8 Dakota with a pretty soft mousse. I actually softened it up since the last time we were riding, and I'm glad I did, especially in this situation. The slick stuff, the softer, the better for sure. You might even want to run an IX09W in the really, really slick stuff. That being said, soft setup. I run 2 rim locks. I have heard that Manny Rettenbickler, as I slide down the hill, Manny Rettenbickler was running like 4 to 6 at certain rounds of the Hard Enduro series. So that shows how soft his mousse is. Also, obviously, he doesn't want that thing coming off the rim, but I mean, with 2, I've never had one come off the rim with 2 rim locks. So that being said, yeah, man, soft setup is key. It's a JX8 Dakota with a real soft mousse. I might even go even softer, making sure that we're getting that maximum traction in those technical sections. Let's move on to the next one.